English Group 7 by Matthew Fan, Jaylind Durgin, and John Javier Carvente. The first archetype is innate wisdom versus educated stupidity. This is when characters show wisdom and understanding in situations opposed to those in charge or educated. These characters that can instinctively understand what to do and can think on the spot have innate wisdom, while characters that are educated but are stupid and clueless in many situations are examples of educated stupidity. An example of this is from the book/film Harry Potter, where Hermione is an example of educated stupidity since she's someone that's very book smart and has lots of knowledge about the wizarding world. She's a very consistently smart student in the story. However, when it actually comes to practical situations, Hermione always falls short to characters such as Harry and Ron, who aren't as smart as Hermione, but represent innate wisdom in making quick decisions and being more street smart. Ron and Harry are able to think on their feet and can work well in practical situations, even if they aren't the smartest people.
Supernatural intervention. Supernatural intervention refers to the intervention of a supernatural being, force, or God in human affairs. Whether their intervention helps or hinders the humans on their quest, supernatural intervention usually involves the humans gaining information or knowledge that affects them. Supernatural intervention is not always an intervention with a character and God, but can also be an intervention with any magical, all-knowing type of character, or even just an event that is caused by some force beyond scientific understanding and the laws of nature. An example of this is when the three witches summon 8 apparitions of kings that Macbeth realizes are Banquo's descendants. This knowledge shocks him because he understands that he will fail in the future and Banquo will succeed even though he is dead. The witches and apparitions represent a supernatural intervention, since witches and apparitions don't exist in real life. They also represent how a supernatural intervention can help or hinder a human on their quest, as the witches serve to lure Macbeth with their messages and influence him to do things such as killing Duncan and killing Banquo in the story.
Fire. The archetype fire often represents knowledge, light, life, and rebirth. It is also one of the four elements essential to life. Fire consumes, warms, inspires, and illuminates. However, it can also bring pain, death, and represent hell, so the meaning depends on the context of its use. Fire is also the only element humans can make themselves, so it serves as a connection between mortals and gods. Fire is often used as a ritual which leads to represent birth and resurrection. In the modern world, fire usually serves to represent destruction and chaos, with forest fires in the media. Fire can represent purification as well, since the old growth that is burned away leaves room for new growth to begin. An example is in Fahrenheit 451, when Beatty says, "Is perpetual motion the thing man wanted to invent but never did, or almost perpetual motion? If you let it go on, it'd burn our lives out." This is on page 115. This quote took place at the beginning of part 3 when the firemen arrived at Montag's house to burn it up, and Beatty talks about fire. This archetype is used in the situation as a destructive force, as it consumes Montag's house and his life is falling apart. However, as Montag begins to develop, we start to see that the burning of his house symbolizes his rebirth and growth as a character, as he strays from his destructive tendencies and onto a new beginning. Ice. Ice is a common symbol of rigidity and lack of affection or enthusiasm. Opposed to water, which is fresh and smooth, like a river or stream, ice emulates harshness and cold. Ice is also seen as the worst environment for humans because it is the most uninhabitable land for us, and in general, winter is represented for the season of death. Opposed to fire, ice is representative of darkness, ignorance, sterility, and death. It represents unexplored land that humans cannot easily explore without hardships. Ice is common in winter, which represents the season of death and suffering for humans. It is also commonly used as a symbol in science fiction. An example of ice in a movie is Frozen. When Elsa embraces her ice powers and accidentally harms Anna, she secludes herself from everyone else in a castle made of the same ice power. Later in the film, when soldiers are trying to enter her castle, She attacks and almost kills them using her ice magic. This symbolizes how ice is harmful to humans as well as a symbol for lack of affection or empathy. In addition, later in the story, Elsa's ice magic was used to create a blizzard. This depicted how ice is harmful to humans because it trapped everyone in their homes and made it hard for Anna to get out when she needed help outside of her castle. Passage presentation is from lines 68 to 124. Act 4, Scene 1. The narrator is John Javier Carvente. He is also Macbeth. Matthew is the first witch, and I play the second and third witch. The first apparition is Jean Javier again, and the second apparition is Matthew, while I am the third one.
Thunder, first apparition, an armed head. Tell me, thou unknown power.
He knows thy thought. Hear his speech, but say thou not.
Macbeth, 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 beware Macduff, beware the Thane of Fife. Dismiss me, enough. He descends. Whate'er thou art for thy good caution, thanks. Thou hast harped my fear aright. But one word more.
He will not be commanded. Here's another more potent than the first.
Thunder, second apparition, a bloody child.
Macbeth, Macbeth, Macbeth.
Had I 3 ears, I'd hear thee.
Be bloody, bold, and resolute. Laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth.
He descends. Then live, Macduff, what need I fear of thee? But yet I'll make assurance double sure, and take a bond of fate. Thou shalt not live, that I may tell pale-hearted fear it lies, and sleep in smite of thunder. Thunder, third apparition, a child crowned with a tree in his hand. What is this that rises like the issue of a king, and wears upon his baby brow the round of a top sovereignty?
Listen,
Listen,
but
but speak
speak
not.
not.
Be lion mettled, proud, and take no care, who chafes, who frets, or where conspirers are. Macbeth shall never vanquish, be until great Birnam wood to high Dunsinane hill shall come against him.
He descends. That will never be. Who can impress the forest, bid the tree, unfix his earth-bound root? Sweet Bodements, good! Rebellious dead, rise never till the wood of Burnham rise, and our high-placed Macbeth shall live the lease of nature, pay his breath to time and mortal custom. Yet my heart throbs to know one thing. Tell me, if your art can tell so much, shall Banquo's issue ever reign in this kingdom?
Seek to know no more.
I will be satisfied. Deny me this, and an eternal curse fall on you. Let me know. Cauldron sinks. Boys. Why sinks that cauldron, and what noise is this?
Show.
Show, show, show his eyes and grieve his heart. Come like shadows, so depart.
A show of 8 kings, the 8th king with a glass in his hand, and Banquo last. Thou art too like the spirit of Banquo. Down! Thy crown does sear mine eyeballs, and thy hair, thou other gold-brown brow, is like the first, a third is like the former. Filthy hags, why do you show me this? A fourth? Start! Eyes! What, will the line stretch out the crack of doom? Another yet? A seventh? I'll see no more. And yet the eighth appears who bears a glass which show me many more. And some I see that twofold balls and triple sceptres carry. Horrible sight! Now I see 'tis true, for the blood-boltered Banquo smiles upon me and points at them for this. The apparitions disappear. Passage context. In this passage, Macbeth demanded the witches answer his question. The witches then summoned 3 different apparitions that all hold a clue to Macbeth's future. The first apparition is an armed head and tells Macbeth to beware the Thane of Fife, who is Macduff. The second apparition is a bloody child, and he tells Macbeth that no man born of woman can defeat Macbeth. The third apparition is a child crowned with a tree in his hand, and tells Macbeth that he cannot be defeated unless Birnam Wood travels to Dunsinane Hill to attack him. Because of this, Macbeth becomes convinced that no one shall ever defeat him, and Macbeth's confidence grows about him being king safely. Then Macbeth demands to know whether Banquo will ever pose a threat to his kingdom. The witches then summon 8 different kings, followed by the ghost of Banquo. This confuses and angers Macbeth, and he demands to know what this means. But the witches disappear without saying anything.
Passage significance. The significance of this passage to the play is through how it shows the change in character of Macbeth. In the beginning of the story, when Macbeth kills Duncan and Banquo, he was extremely scared of what he was doing and paranoid of the consequences. However, Macbeth is now becoming more confident and ruthless, now that the witches are assuring him and convincing him that no one can harm him. The witches do this when they say, "Laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born," and "Macbeth shall never be vanquished, be until great Birnam Wood to Dunsinane Hill shall come against him." With these quotes, the witches are convincing Macbeth by almost making it sound like he is invincible by saying no one can harm him and he won't be defeated until Great Birnam Wood to high Dunsinane Hill comes for him, which seems like an impossible occurrence to happen. This also shows how the witches have been playing Macbeth this whole time by giving him a false sense of security with his messages, but also leaving him confused by what they really mean.
Literary and rhetorical techniques. Throughout the entire passage, the witches speak in rhymes. Shakespeare uses this to emphasize the mysterious and chaotic yet orderly nature of the witches. Shakespeare also uses the witches rhyming to create a set rhythm, which contributes to the eerie tone, as the rhyme and meter fall into a hypnotic cadence. Shakespeare also uses the literary technique of imagery by illustrating the apparitions. With this imagery, Shakespeare uses the various apparitions to foreshadow Macbeth's fate. The first, an armed head, foreshadows how Macbeth will die. The second, a bloody child, tells Macbeth that he can only die to someone who is none of woman born. The third also foreshadows when he can be defeated through telling him the events surrounding the time of his death. The fourth apparition is arguably the most important instance of foreshadowing. The apparition is 8 kings who are all descendants of Banquo, as well as many more shown in the reflection of a mirror held by the last one. The fact that these are Banquo's descendants implies that Banquo's bloodline will take over Macbeth, implying that he loses in the short future. Oh, anyway, sorry.
Inference question. I messed up. Oh my god. Alright. Inference question. When the witches summoned the 8 kings in Banquo, what do you think this was supposed to represent? The 8 kings in Banquo foreshadow that Banquo's heirs will rule Scotland, not Macbeth, which symbolizes that Macbeth will ultimately fail. The 8 kings that appear represent Banquo's children. Even if Banquo cannot be king because Macbeth killed him, Banquo's predecessors will still fulfill the prophecy and become king, replacing Macbeth. This represents that no matter what Macbeth can try to do, in the end, he will be overtook by Banquo anyways. This also represents Macbeth's realization that he will ultimately fail. The witches continue to play Macbeth by convincing him and ensuring him that no one can harm him through the apparitions, giving him a false sense of security. Macbeth is furious that he will be overthrown and doesn't want to believe what the witches are showing him. Macbeth's reaction represents his unwavering confidence and refusal to accept his fate.
Analytical question. The analytical question is, how does this passage show innate wisdom versus educated stupidity, and why is this archetype used in this passage? In this passage, Macbeth is confident but blindsided. He talks about Macduff's murder as if he is proud to have taken his life, and proceeds to ask if Banquo's children are to take his reign as king. In this instant, he seems smart and calculated because he is planning ahead and trying to think 5 steps ahead of the witch's prophecy. However, he is actually stupid because anything he does won't matter in the end, because the prophecy will eventually happen whether he tries to stop it or not. Macbeth in this passage is the educated stupidity. He is able to understand what is happening and tries to stop it, but he is too stupid to understand that there is no way to. An example of innate wisdom are the witches. They are a supernatural entity that contain all knowledge about Macbeth and his life. This archetype is used to juxtapose the witches with Macbeth to show that Macbeth isn't fit to be king because he isn't smart enough to make the proper decisions. Thanks for watching.